We are joined by Alex from Playing with Fire, who runs a successful pickup artist or seduction YouTube channel. The first question I want to ask you, Alex, is why did you create your channel?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a long story, but essentially what happened was around 2018, I had a Facebook group where I was giving guys advice, and then Vice wrote a hit piece about me. So I lost the Facebook group. So I needed another platform that I could be on, and YouTube was the logical move.
So, what made you interested in like teaching seduction? I guess that's your career, right? Like, why did you choose that?
Right. Yeah. So why did I start the initial Facebook group? I had no like initially just started with me like just wanting to share stories and like network with people who who are into the same shit I am. So this was around 2016, 2017. RSD Inner Circle was kind of dying. I was living in LA. And yeah, I just thought it'd be fun. Like I had no idea, no intention of making a business out of it. Create a Facebook group, share some of my hookup stories, kind of get a little internet validation, have some fun, meet some people. And the group just grew naturally. I never promoted it or marketed it. The Facebook group kept growing and growing. We had some like several underlying principles in the group. The first big one, the main premise of the group was that if you're going to talk about a girl you hooked up with, you have to show all the screenshots from start to finish. So the problem with a lot of groups were having around that time, it was just like a brag fest. It's like, yeah, I hooked up with this girl. But okay, but that doesn't help anyone. Like, how? What did you do? What was your opener? What did you message her after that? So that was like the premise of the group. It's like, okay, if you're going to brag, you have to show the full conversation from start to finish. And I think a lot of people resonated with the fact that there were so many examples that you could learn from. It was also like a pretty positive community. I think the early 2017 PWF was a really good community. It was like positive. People were like, like kind of high on life. People like, yeah, Tinder was still pretty good back then. So yeah, I would say it's probably that.
Cool. You kind of fell into it organically. What keeps you going? Like, do you enjoy your work?
I do. I mean, there's definitely parts of it that I don't enjoy, but overall, I'm very, very happy with my job, and I would not trade my job for any job in the world. I would not sell my company unless it was like an insanely unreasonable amount of money. I very much do enjoy it. I mean, there's many elements of it. Like number one, probably the biggest one is challenging myself. It's like I make goals for myself. Like, okay, I want to hit 200,000 subscribers by then, and it's like working towards that goal. And I find that like brings me more happiness than like some short-term pursuit, like just having casual sex or getting drunk or partying. Like that doesn't really do much in terms of my happiness, but achieving long-term goals that I set for myself makes me happier. And that's kind of at the end of the day what everything's about, I guess, at least in terms of motivation. Also, I do enjoy helping people. It is nice when people tell you, like, yeah, man, I was really struggling. I was like, virgin. I was like, blah, blah, blah. Now I have a girlfriend. And, hearing stuff like that definitely does motivate me along the way. I enjoy the ability to influence other people. I don't know. I feel like I was kind of designed to talk for a living. And I don't know, I feel like it's one of the few things I'm good at. So I do enjoy that. And I feel like there's a need for a rational voice in the red pill dating space. Someone who is not blue pill, not like super simpy, but also not like falling for the red pill crap, hook, line, and sinker. Someone who thinks for themselves and gives like a balanced, nuanced opinion. And that's what I feel like I bring to the table.
Yeah, I've noticed in your videos you were so funny in that experiment you did, the social experiment where you pretended to abuse your girlfriend in public.
Yeah.
One of your lines, you were like, I can say whatever I want to you. The manosphere says it's fine to talk to women like this. I thought that was so funny. There's been a couple of other things, like you've made some videos critical of the manosphere or like the red pill or whatever. What's your biggest gripe with them?
We're talking red pill specifically.
Yeah, so I'm not so good with the lingo, but whoever it is that you're critical of, like, why are you critical of them?
Well, I've been critical of all parts of the manosphere. I've been critical of black pill, red pill. I've been critical of everyone. So specifically red pill. I think I pointed out five things in that video that I don't like. I think number one is a tendency to focus on superficial things. It's like, yeah, get a nice car, make seven figures so that you can get yourself a nice car, nice apartment, right? That's how you're going to get the girls, like if you're struggling with dating, like don't worry about it, get your income up and then the dating part will take care of itself. It's a horrible mindset because number one, even if that does work, it's going to attract gold diggers, which are not the girls that you actually want. And number two, it's like conflating money and success with women. There's plenty of rich people who suck with women. Like, look, if you're like Jeff Bezos rich, like, yeah, you'll do okay. Just simply because you're famous and because there's going to be, a lot of girls who will chase you for your name. But if you're talking just regular, like six figures, seven figures, like I've had plenty of clients who struggle, and I've had plenty of clients who are broke who are doing much better than those people, right? So, and me myself, like I would say I'm like top 2% income wise now in the US. But I used to be like really broke. I mean, I used to live in like a house with 10 different people. I used to have to sneak onto the train because I couldn't even afford the train ticket. I used to be pretty poor. And, I was getting laid more back then simply because I had more time. So nowadays, I just don't have the time to meet up with a bunch of girls. Back then, I had a lot of free time. And yeah. So I think that the whole focus on superficial things is incorrect. I think, if anything, there's so much more value in developing a strong connection relationship with a girl. That like, I don't know, that to me brings me so much more, or even your friends, like having really good friends, really
So,
good family, than
so
all
I'm
the
sure you've
superficial stuff.
I'm sure you've got more to say about the manosphere, but let me drill down into that one a little bit because you're a seduction guy, right? Like you have one night stands. Yeah.
Well, I used to have a lot of them. Yeah. Nowadays I still do, but not so often, but yeah.
Okay, cool. So like are you in a long-term relationship?
Yeah, I'm in a one-way open relationship. So I've been together with my girlfriend Natty for about 4 years now. I still can hook up with other girls. She's okay with it. Sometimes we have threesomes, but generally speaking, vast majority of my energy is spent on my girlfriend.
Okay. Will you get married at some point?
I don't know. I mean, I don't see the benefit of it, honestly. And my girlfriend doesn't really, she's not pushing for it or anything like that. I think the only way I would get married is if I was trying to have a family. If I want to have kids, then I probably would get married. But I don't, at this point in time, want to have kids. So therefore, I don't really see how being married will benefit me in any way. It seems like if you're a guy who's like fairly successful, it just doesn't really benefit you. At best, it's neutral. So the only reason I would do it is would be to like please my family, and I'm not that determined to please my family. So yeah, I just don't see the point of it, honestly.
Okay. So does she want to have children?
She's kind of like me, not now, but maybe at some point in the future.
I mean, do you think you'll be together if you don't have children and that doesn't bond you? Do you think you'll be together forever, or do you think at some point her looks will fade and you'll just like replace her with like a younger woman? Or
Well, it's definitely not like at this point we've been together 4 years. Like it's not like it's not like her looks. That's the main thing that's keeping me around.
mm,
I mean, she's an attractive girl. There's a lot of attractive girls. It's just like that. I love her, and we formed a deep bond. And I like to me the idea of not being with her, not seeing her for an extended period of time is painful. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I have, hopefully, yeah. We're kind of going with the flow. If it gets to a point where we start like not liking each other, not enjoying spending time with each other, then the relationship will end. But we're not at that point yet. We seem to be bonding and growing, and like I just legitimately enjoy her presence. So yeah, I mean, anything is possible, but you never know what's going to happen in the future.
I don't mean to like interrogate you. I think it just speaks to the struggle a lot of men face between the degree to which it's sensible to go with the flow and the degree to which you're potentially just aimlessly indulging in like hedonism and having fun and you're not moving towards a predetermined like future. A lot of guys who value their time, it's because it's like, right, I want to meet these goals, and so I've got to be doing things in order to get to that. That can include relationship goals, but it doesn't sound, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't sound like you have a predetermined like future in mind. I want to get married, have these children, have grandchildren, that kind of thing. You're just like, if it feels good right now, we'll go with it and we'll see what happens, and I'm open to changing in the future. Is that an accurate summation of
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So with like a lot of things in life, I do have a set goal, like with business, lifestyle, health, like family, I want to help my parents retire and move them down to Miami. So with a lot of things, I do have a set goal, but with relationships, yeah, you're right. I don't have a set goal. I wouldn't say I'm hedonistic about it, but it's more of like, I'm kind of seeing where I'm at. It's just because like I know myself, like when I was in my mid 20s, the idea of being in like a serious relationship would have like bored me to death. Like I would not have been able to have this relationship 10 years ago. Just my brain chemistry was different. I just wanted to fuck around, I just didn't want to have like, yeah, I just didn't want that. So in 5, 10 years, I might be leading more on the side of like, hey, I want to, have kids, or I could be in the other direction where I'm like, hey, I don't want to be in a relationship anymore. So yeah, I guess, yeah, kind of going with the flow when it comes to relationship. I mean, we're obviously both very committed, but again, I feel like, 50% of marriages end in divorce. A lot of people think they're going to have a future together. They don't. So I tend to lean on the side of caution when it comes to relationship type of stuff.
Okay. Can you tell me what bothered you about the label hedonism? Like, why doesn't that, like, I hear like the one night stands, the threesomes and stuff like that. That seemed fine to me, but what irked you about that label?
Oh no, nothing really. I mean, I used to be very hedonistic when I was younger. I just didn't feel like it was accurate because there's really in my relationship there's minimal hedon. Like hedonism would be like doing drugs, partying, fucking a bunch of chicks. Right now, primarily like I'm like have like spending time with my girlfriend, going on dates with her. Like and not like party dates, like where we grab dinner, go for a walk, where we cuddle. Where I've primarily focused on my business. Like it's been like a few months since I met up with some like random like girl from Tinder. So I would say like at this point, I'm not at a hedonistic place, but there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with people being hedonistic as long as it's within reason. Like you don't want to get into like hard drugs or something like that. But aside from that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're comparing yourself to like who you used to be, and you're like, I'm more like traditional and boring now than ever before. I am curious about the time that you did spend like being like hedonistic, if you can own that, in terms of sleeping with other
Yeah,
women.
for sure.
Like, what was the source of pleasure? Like, when you do have sex with a girl, like a one night stand, what makes that a pleasurable experience for you?
Yeah, so I would get I can explain it exactly perfectly. I would have these like massive dopamine highs. So I would meet a girl and sleep with her and like the sex is all obviously good. The sex is fun, obviously, right? And the sex is still fun for me. But the difference is
I'm just
back then I used to
sorry.
get
I'm
these
just going
like
to interrupt and just be. I don't think it is obvious. I don't think everybody knows exactly why the sex is fun. So, if feel free to state things that are obvious to you, just in case people don't necessarily get it.
okay. Well, I mean, I enjoy having sex with attractive girls and I like the novelty. I think novelty always feels good to most people. But the difference is I used to get these like massive dopamine rushes where I would just be like, even after the sex, I would be pumped for hours. I'd be like, yeah, fuck this girl. She's so hot. I'd be like, send a photo of her to my friends, be like, dude, look at this tit, man. This is epic. I would be like so high on life. Right. And those started going to dude, I wish I still got those, but yeah, those went away like 3-4 years ago. So I don't get that. So now if I have sex with a new girl, I get the satisfaction of busting a nut and the during the sex itself, right? Obviously it's a good experience. I'm in a flow state, but afterwards I don't feel any positive like emotions or anything. I just feel like, okay, that's cool.
Why do you
Whatever.
think it
It's
went
like
away?
it's a good question. I think okay, we're gonna get personal. I think for me, it largely
You've
had to
gone
do.
blurry, by the way.
Oh yeah, my camera tends to do that. Okay, there we go. I think it had to do with me relapsing when it comes to chronic Lyme disease. I've had chronic Lyme disease for about 8-9 years now, and in 2020, I relapsed pretty bad, and that's right around the same time when the dopamine high started going away. So I think that when I was like really sick and just like just like having massive health issues, just the idea of fucking some random chick became so like laughable to me. Um, yeah, I think also because one of the things that was happening is because I was having a really bad neck pain. Every time I would fuck a girl, because I would want to like if it's the first time, I want to like fuck her really well. I want to make sure like I'm going above and beyond. And then like I would always get like neck pain because my neck would start fucking hurting. Versus I wouldn't get that with my girlfriend because my girlfriend I don't feel like I need to like put on a show or something like that. And so I feel like I conditioned myself to associate pain with sex with random girls. I think that's a very unfortunate thing that happened. So yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, that'll do it. So
yeah.
it doesn't sound like there was actually a psychological shift. It was more like a fatigue and the pain kind of thing. So your values, like I wondered if perhaps being, questioning your health and your own mortality might have shifted your perspective or your values or something like that. It doesn't sound like it was that deep. It was more like surface level. Is that correct?
I'd say it's like 50-50, honestly. I definitely think that like if I look at my life now, like even outside of like women, like I will make way more time for my friends and family. Like I remember when I was in my mid to late 20s, like I'd be hanging out with my friends or my family, and I'm on my phone, I'm on Tinder, like just barely paying attention. They're like, Alex, Alex. I'm like, oh yeah, hang on 1 second. I used to almost look at it as like a chore to like, like because hey, this is getting in the way of my time where I could be banging chicks off Tinder. Versus now I legitimately like much more appreciate like the deep meaningful connections that I have with my family, my friends, and and my girlfriend. So I do think there was definitely an element of a value shift for sure. But yeah, also it was like a physical thing as well.
Do you think that some of your self-esteem today is based on the number of women that you've slept with in the past?
I think for a while it used to be directly tied into it, but I think at this point I've gone like way past that. Like I can not fuck a girl for 2 years and I'll still feel like the same about myself, assuming all other factors are equal. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like one of the things that happens with pickup a lot is that you get into this endless cycle where you need to fuck a new girl every so often to feel good about yourself. And if you're not fucking a new girl, you feel like your like self esteem is like tanking. I see that with a lot of my friends, a lot of people I know who get laid a lot. I don't know. I just 3 or 4 years ago, somehow, maybe with the Lyme disease and the combination of finally getting to a point where I've had sex with like hundreds of girls, where like just my brain no longer needs that, I guess. I feel I'm much more like my self-esteem will be tied into things like how much I'm accomplishing with work or, whether I'm slacking off when it comes to like things I'm supposed to do or, or not. Like today, for example, I had to drive my dad to the airport and I thought I was running late and I wasn't going to be able to give him a ride. And I legitimately felt bad. I was like, yo, like I fucking let myself down. Like I should be spending that last time with my dad. Fortunately, it worked out because I was able to get his place. But it's more like that kind of thing that will like affect my self esteem now, rather than just like girls that I'm fucking.
I feel like your customers, the ones that are probably going to be big spenders and pay for like private coaching sessions, are the sort of guys who want to sleep with women for more than just hedonism. There's some psychological thing that they're trying to prove to themselves. And so I'm impressed that you're here talking to me, owning the fact that it sort of sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've kind of outgrown that. You've matured. You're basing your self-esteem off something more substantial now, friends, family, those kinds of things. Because it would seem to me that that would almost be in your financial interest to not say that kind of thing, to keep promoting that, like, yeah, man, you want to be the man, you gotta have sex with lots of women, so that guys who are watching this might want to emulate you and then pay you that money. Is my point making sense?
No, it does. And I was at dude, I have like some of my closest friends, like my even my business partner, Indian P. He's exactly at that point. We've had this discussion a million times where he's like just chasing the endless high of new girls, like just endless, endless, endless high. And he's just having sex with like 3, 4 girls a week. And he goes on ups. And then when when he gets flaked on, he gets these downs. It's like almost like chasing a drug addiction, but one that's not like physically bad for you. Assuming you wear condoms and don't get STDs. Yeah, I mean, I would say that like I don't know. I'm pretty happy that I'm not at that endless like fucking wheel cycle, but I definitely went through it really hard in my mid to late 20s. And I think that maybe for some guys, like someone like myself, I did to some extent need to hook up with a lot of girls to prove to myself I'm no longer a loser. Because this all stems back from like my high school days when I was, not popular. I got bullied. I was unsuccessful with women. I got constantly rejected. Right. So that like really kind of left like a mark, I guess, on my brain. And so in my mid 20s and late 20s was all about proving that part of my brain that I'm no longer that person. And I feel like at this point, I've proved that point to my subconscious. Like it's pretty clear. Like I'm not that guy, that was in high school. I don't know if I would have been able to get to that point if I didn't hook up with a bunch of girls. Maybe through like meditation or self-development, I could have still arrived at the same point. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard because I think for some people, they definitely do need at least some experience so that they can let go of some past identity they're hanging on to. That like, oh, I'm a loser. No one likes me. It's like, well, you had sex with over 100 girls. Like literally a lot of people like you, right? And then it like clicks for them versus if they have no external results to like kind of identify with, right? It's like, well, I'm a virgin. You're like, well, yeah, you're still a virgin. So I don't know. It's kind of hard. I think that for some people they need that, and some people maybe could change their identity when it comes to women in other ways.
So is that kind of how you conceptualize your audience, your customers, in that you are helping them overcome the kind of insecurities that you yourself came out of high school with? Like, hey, like, I don't want you to feel like down about yourself like the way that I did. I'm going to show you how to get good at this, then your self-esteem's going to boost. Or do you not think about it that deeply?
No, I don't really talk about inner stuff. I feel like I'm not qualified for that. Like, I think for that, they should see a therapist. I talk about external things mainly. I mean, I will share stories about my life and how I feel if I'm asked a question and like what my values are. But it's like, hey, this is what I discovered to be good photos for Tinder. This is what I discovered to be good text. This is what I discovered to be a good bio. This is what I discovered is a good strategy. So I give them like 95% of it. I give them the external stuff they need to be successful with women. I do nowadays get a little bit into like how to set up a relationship, how to manage a relationship, so that you have a, happy relationship. But yeah, it's mainly focused on the external. I feel like for the internal stuff, it's just like, I'm just not qualified for that. I mean, I have theories. I think I could help them, but I don't feel comfortable going deep into like interchange.
No, I
Without.
appreciate the humility, but that's a slight tangent from what I was trying to get at. What I'm thinking
Okay.
is that pickup artistry and seduction can be used for good and it can be used for negative. So, for example, if you've got somebody who's addicted to those highs and instead of working on their own self-esteem, they're just trying to sleep with a bunch of women, contributing to promiscuity and hookup culture and all of that stuff, they're basically doing a negative thing, right? Like in the techniques that you teach on your channel could be pushing somebody further deeper down in addiction. On the other hand, from a positive perspective, you could be taking some guy who doesn't have a lot of confidence, who needs basic tips and instruction, things like that, and then you're helping him get out of his shell, improve people's lives, be the life of the party, be a bit flirtatious, have some fun, give some women some positive experiences, then ultimately find a girlfriend and cash out of the dating market. So I'm thinking, what I'm curious about, Alex, is whether or not you think about the morality of the product that you offer. Because if somebody wanted to use your techniques and your information in order to just like ruthlessly sleep with a bunch of women, they could absolutely do that. Like, do you think about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. I've had, debates on my channel like relating to this. I think that, well, I think we might have a disagreement in terms of our like worldview. I think that there's nothing wrong with sleeping with a bunch of women as long as you are honest, as long as you're upfront with yourself and the woman. And like for some people, I mean, it's like going to the gym can be an addiction, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's bad if it's something that motivates you, helps you get out of your house. It's something that you're working on, right? There's no negative physical consequences to going to the gym. There's no physical consequences to being a player, assuming you're wearing condoms, right? So I don't see it as a bad thing. I think it only becomes a bad thing if you're lying and misleading either yourself or the girls. But again, I teach honesty. I teach that you should be upfront. You shouldn't pussyfoot around like sharing what your intentions are in a socially calibrated way. So I don't see it as a bad thing if they want to just go around and slay girls. I mean, whatever, fuck a bunch of girls. It's just like I'm personally not at that point, but I can empathize because I was at that point. I have a bunch of like some of my closest friends, my business partner, they're at that point. They just want to go out and fuck a bunch of girls. I don't judge them. I mean, that's kind of where I was. And like, now but I wouldn't say that like I'm superior than them because I'm doing other things. I mean, I think there's advantages to kind of my life because it's more stable and I'm able to build deeper connections. But then on the flip side, they're much more social than me. They're their style's probably better than me because they're going out all the time, so they have to look good. So I don't know. There's like pros and cons, I feel like, to both lifestyles. I wouldn't necessarily just say that mine is like superior to the other one. It's just the lifestyle right now that makes the most sense for me, given my brain chemistry.
Okay. So that's a fascinating morality. The honesty clears you out. If I was to come up to you and say, Alex, I'm going to hit you with a crowbar. I'm being completely honest and upfront. This is what I'm about to do. And then I hit you in the face with a crowbar. Would you consider that action moral?
Well, did I consent to it? Do I say yes, sure, hit me, or you just do it without my consent?
You consent.
I consent. Um, you hit me in the face with a crowbar. I would have to be a real dumb fuck to consent to that. I mean, dude, I'm kind of libertarian. I think that as long as I'm not drunk and I'm like an adult, if I consent to it, like I don't really see a big ethical issue there. As long as like I'm not drunk, I'm not pressured or something like that. So it'll be like, first of all, like that's extremely unlikely to happen. But if it did happen, like you're filming a jackass stunt or some kind of funny video, I consent to it. On sound mind and body. I don't see that as an issue.
Yeah, I mean, let's dig deep into this because I found your reaction so interesting. I'd have to be so stupid to consent to that. And I'm in my mind screaming, there are women who consent to stupid sexual choices all the time. That doesn't make them moral. Do you know what I mean?
Like, can you give me an example of like what would be one of those?
A woman who is extremely promiscuous is a good example. And sleeping with lots of men. She can
But
consent
as
to doing
long,
that, but it's not a good idea.
well, as long if she's practicing safe sex, why is it a negative?
She is potentially harming her capacity to pair bond in the future. And I mean, sure, you've heard all these talking points. This won't be a surprise to you. And she's pricing herself out of the market for good men who don't necessarily want to be with a woman who's had a lot of partners.
Yeah, I mean, I see your points. I think they're half truth. But number one, I feel like the dating market is so bad for men, so good for women that even a girl who has 200 bodies, 300 bodies, and gain weight can still get a boyfriend like within a week. We've done a lot of Tinder experiments where we show how easy it is for a girl to meet a guy. There still be like plenty of guys that will be willing to take her. And I think number two, the pair bonding thing, I don't know. I think the science on that is kind of dubious. I do know that there's a strong correlation thing. So meaning girls who are like virgins have lower body count are more capable of pair bonding. But I don't know if it's a correlation or causation. I'm not convinced that there's a causation factor there. That meaning like the actual process of fucking 20 dudes makes a girl unable to pair bond. But also I would say the last thing is like not everyone is looking for that. Like some people just want to live very like some people like the analogy I would give is people who are daredevils, right? Who do like, bungee jumping and shit like that, right? Like very stuff that, provokes their whatever nervous system. Like that's kind of, it's just very daredevil type of stuff. It's not what I want to do. I'm sure it's not what you want to do, but I can't say that's like a wrong way to live life. It's like, hey, if you want to do that, you want to do that. Some people do the opposite. They fucking want to meditate all day and live in like a monastery. Like, would we tell a monk that, like, hey, man, like, you're not going to be able to get a girl because you're going to be in that fucking, cave for 40 years meditating with a bunch of dudes? It's just like different choices. I think as long as you make the choice with, you're in a sound place of mind and you make the conscious decision to, hey, at this point in my life, I want to get laid a lot. I don't see that as anything wrong at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely picking up on that. It's a typical kind of like liberal morality that places consent and freedom as the be all and end all of everything. And I can understand exactly where you're coming from. But to me, it does
More
seem
like
like
libertarian more than liberal. But yeah.
um, I mean, I guess I was talking in terms of like a social moral thing. So libertarians a little bit more in the political kind of realm when we're talking about like social moral choices about people's
Okay.
lives.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Okay.
sorry, that's just what tripped me up. But it does seem like an evasion of responsibility in terms of actually determining, well, what is a good life then? Because it seems to me that you don't necessarily have a strong idea in your mind, correct me if I'm wrong, about what is a good way for human beings to live their life. It sort of seems like, well, so long as they agree to it, then it's good. Is that correct?
Well, partially. So I think you're responsible for yourself and probably your family, right? And to a smaller extent, your friends, and maybe to a much smaller extent, your community, maybe to some extent, right? But I don't think you are responsible for other people that you don't know that you might swipe right on Tinder for what's the best way to live their life. I also don't think there's one universal best way to live their life. Like, you know who Andrew from the Crucible is? Okay, he's become like a really good buddy of mine. We do a lot of debates. He's like a complete 180 different than me. He's hardcore Christian. He fucking prays and goes to church all day. He has 5 children. He's all about like God and Jesus, right? Totally different life than me, right? Like couldn't be more different if we asked, right? But and to me, the stuff that he does makes no sense because I think religion is like nonsense. And I think that like, why the fuck do you need to have 5 kids? It seems like a pain in the ass. But I would never in a million years think his style of life is worse. It just seems that for him, based on his values, that life makes more sense versus for me, based on my values, my life makes more sense. I mean, there's also some people who want to be like volunteers, right? They don't want to have a business. They don't want to make a lot of money. They just want to like serve people. They want to volunteer in Africa, or they want to do some kind of charity work, right? And again, me personally, I want to make money. I want to have a business, right? But again, I wouldn't say that person who's a volunteer is like picking an inferior type of life. It's just different. I think there's some universal principles of what would make a good life. I think being healthy. I think that having self-awareness. I think that having good relationships with like at least friends and family. So eating healthy. So I do think there are some universal principles of what creates a good life. But I think there's just different directions you can go in. One is not better than the other. It just comes down to your values and, you know, the things that, you know, you make you happy and things that don't make you happy. Like Andrew legitimately probably gets really fucking happy every time he goes to church and prays. It probably brings him a lot of happiness, you know, when he's sitting and praying to God. For me, that would be like fucking miserable. But again, we're different people.
But you agree that some values are better than others?
What I was saying is I agree that some lifestyles, there's some universal factors that will make some lifestyles better than the other. Like someone who eats healthy on average will have a better lifestyle than someone who eats like shit. Someone who exercises will on average have a better lifestyle than someone who doesn't. Someone who has close relationships with friends and family will on average be better than someone who doesn't. So there are some universal things that we can look at.
Okay, so let me jump in there. That's kind of my point, is that I would just include in that list not doing hedonism and promiscuity is a better value than just indulging those kind of animal instincts. And therefore, using consent or honesty as the measure of morality evades responsibility for actually determining whether or not that's a better life or a worse life, a better value or a worse value.
Yeah, so like if I'm to look at it from a purely personal perspective, like how I feel right now, I would generally agree with you because that's what makes me happier now. But if I was to look at it like universally, I would not agree. I think that it's just different strokes for different folks. Are we talking about men and women or both right now?
Let's talk about women first. So talk me through, in what circumstance is it a good idea for a woman to be sleeping around a lot? Like, walk me through that value system. I can't even conceptualize it.
Well, if the woman enjoys having, enjoys novelty and having a lot of casual sex, right?
Okay, so her pleasure is the most important thing. So, and that would like
No,
eradicate.
it doesn't. No, it doesn't have to be the most important thing. It could be one thing that's important to her, right? She might work like fucking 50 hours a week, and this is how she de-stresses. She might have anxiety, and this is what brings her out of her shell. I don't know. There could be many factors, but I think for most women, it's not like a permanent thing. They go through that phase, and then eventually, at some point, they want to get into a relationship. And I'm just not convinced at all that because they went through their whole phase, they're not going to be able to get into a relationship. I've just seen so many counter examples, and yeah, like it just. I think any girl, even if she's fucked 500 dudes, can still find a good relationship. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a separate topic, and there's some nuance to it. I'm not saying I'm going to completely disagree with you once we get to that point in the conversation, but I am still curious about your answer when I asked what would be the benefit to her, like what value system would be good, and your answer was, well, if it feels good or if it brings her kind of pleasure.
Happiness. Well, like for example, like what's the benefit of me being obsessed with Game of Thrones and watching every episode, reading every book, right? There's no benefit at all. Like, what's the point of me getting Game of Thrones tattoo and being like the biggest fucking Game of Thrones fanboy? But it gives me pleasure. I'm fascinated by it, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with pleasure in moderation, right? If all you're doing is seeking pleasure, I do think that can become problematic long term. But if you're balancing out short term pleasure along with long term, goal achievement, I think that's totally fine.
What about heroin?
Well, heroin is physically very, very detrimental for you.
Okay.
Versus
what about doom scrolling on TikTok?
Is that when you just spend the whole time just
yeah.
I believe that's like bad for your brain chemistry. I haven't really seen like the science on that, but I feel like I've heard people saying that. But if it in moderation, if it brings you pleasure to do that for half an hour a day, that's fine, right? As long as you got shit going on in your life. Like, dude, I fucking watch, like, I'm extremely goal oriented, but I'll spend like an hour watching Game of Thrones theory videos, right? Like, it's purely just for my entertainment. Like, I do think that life is a combination of short-term pleasure and long-term goal achievement. And like the mix can be different for every person, right? But I think you do kind of need, I don't know. I mean, maybe some people can go just purely long-term goal achievement with no short-term pleasure. I don't think I could be one of those people. I need a little bit, at least something.
Yeah, no, I think that's a false dichotomy. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to determine in your value system whether or not you differentiate between a pleasure that is like got a positive source or a pleasure that has a negative source. Because lots of people can feel pleasurable evading their problems, shooting up drugs, distracting themselves. A lot of people can feel pleasure hurting other people because, they're enjoying the power trip and things like that. I wouldn't say that the fact that they feel good doing that in any way makes it a justifiable or a moral choice. I'm just curious if you share that perspective.
Right. Well, the with the hurting other people is you're causing harm to a different person, right? So that's the big thing. So, for example, the equivalent of that would be if you have like HIV and you don't tell the partner and you give it to them, that would be the equivalent of that. So, yeah, that would be wrong because you're causing harm to other people. Heroin is an addictive drug that is very, very bad for you physically, right? So, casual sex again is also not like that. I viewed more as like being addicted to going to the gym or being addicted to like a TV show. Like, is it like, I guess the question would be like, do you think it is good or bad that like I watch a shitload of Game of Thrones and I'm addicted to it?
You really want to talk about Game of Thrones?
Well, because I'm trying to make an analogy because I would say it's like neither. It's not good or bad, right? It's neutral. It's just something that makes me happy, right? That doesn't really seem to harm me. And I would say casual sex can be exactly like that. When I was in my mid to late 20s, that's what casual sex was for me. It was something that made me happy that didn't really have any negative downside. In fact, I would say that for a guy, it can actually motivate you to get in better shape, right? Because you realize you can get laid more if you're working out, cause you to develop your social skills, right? So I would say for me, it was a massive positive at the time and kind of caused me to get out of my apathetic shell that I had in my early 20s. But I can see how for some people it would be negative. I just don't see the action of having casual sex as a negative in of itself. I see it as a neutral.
Yeah, I can think we've drilled down. There's not much left to go there. Is that fundamentally you don't view casual sex as harmful in any way?
Well, it could be for some people, but just in essence, no. Just kind of like how you said earlier, pickup is can be good or bad, right? It's neutral. It just sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad. I view casual sex the same way. Can be good or bad.
And that actually brings us full circle to back to why I was initially asking this question is you must be aware that some people will be using your content to try and get casual sex for doing it for the bad reasons. And I was wondering if you had those people in mind or if you had the people like who are more following out your story in mind when you're making your content. But I think I've got my answer to that question. I am curious to know about the consent that you brought up with regards to like hitting you in the face with a crowbar because it made me think about BDSM. Is that something that you're into?
I mean, a little bit, but definitely not to that extent. Definitely don't have my girlfriend whack me with a crowbar. Much more mild than that. Much more mild. Like 20 levels more mild.
Sure. Okay. So, do you think that a woman who enjoys being hit and physically harmed, if she derives pleasure from that, that makes it okay?
Well, the premise of BDSM, as far as I know, it's like all supposed to be like highly consensual. There's safe words. But I mean, if there's like physical damage to the girl, like then no, it's not good. But if a girl, for example, likes to be spanked really hard, where there's a handprint on her ass for 2 days, if that's what she wants, then I don't see anything wrong with that. But yeah, if you're actually going to cause physical damage to the girl, then that gets into a different category.
Okay, so obviously you can derive pleasure from like a psychological release. So if you feel like shamed about yourself or inferior, being put in your place, even harmed, can kind of give you like a yes, I'm finally being treated like the piece of dirt that I am. I'm not saying this is representative of all BDSM, but it certainly can be for a lot of these women. And then after they exit that lifestyle and they seek therapy, they recognize that their desire to be hurt wasn't coming from a healthy place. Is that something that you recognize or like agree with, or do you dispute that?
No, I'm sure that can happen. I do think though kinks are weird. Like, are you familiar with the Mr. Slave guy who used to be on my channel? Did you ever watch those live streams?
No.
Okay, this guy was a fucking character. He basically, dude, I don't know. He walked around in a mask and he had a mistress and she would boss him around and make him like fucking eat dog treats and bang and like hit him. And he never had sex with her and he did her laundry. I look at that and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is insanity. But I've had so many conversations with him, and he's like, hey, this is what makes me happy. Regular sex does not make me happy. I don't enjoy it. I've had regular sex. This is what makes me happy, right? Could that guy benefit from therapy? I'm sure he could. But I think that kinks are not always logical. I think if you take it like more, if you take it like a few levels back, something like that's a little bit more mild, like role play or something like that. You know, like I love it when my girlfriend puts on like a schoolgirl outfit or something like that. Like it's just a kink. Like at the end of the day, I don't actually want to fuck a schoolgirl. You know, a lot of girls have like grape fantasies, right? You know, but not a single one of those girls actually wants to get raped. So I think like things in the bedroom and like kink stuff doesn't always translate onto real life traumas, but they can.
This Mr. Slave guy, it sounds like it's pretty real for him if he's eating dog shit.
Dog food. I've never
Dog
seen
food,
any
sorry.
dog food. Yeah, that guy's a basket case. Yeah, that's in a very extreme example, but I
Okay,
don't
I
even know.
guess like I'll be satisfied to drop this one, I suppose, if I'm certain that you've kind of understood my point, I suppose, which is that consent and honesty, which is what you're talking about in the first instance, like you can sleep with women as long as you're honest about it, I don't think is a valid measure of morality. It sounds like you think maybe there's some truth to that, but maybe it's not completely truth. But I don't think that just because people consent to it is a good idea, because we have a culture that is morally bereft and a bunch of people who are deeply traumatized or just plain stupid or haven't been educated about these things. And so I look at the female promiscuity that's going on in the culture and the hookup culture, and I don't think, well, so long as the women are okay with it, that's okay. I think, where are the fathers? Where is the culture telling them that how harmful this is? Where's the promotion of positive sources of pleasure that are character building and focused on family values? I don't think it's enough to be like, okay, well, we live in a degenerate society where we've let these women down. A lot of them were molested as children, and so therefore they're into BDSM and hookup culture, but they're consenting to it now, so that's okay. To me, that's a cop out, and that's letting everybody down. I think we need to have a much more serious conversation about that, because at the moment, it seems to me that the argument of morality in terms of, well, people are consenting to it, we're just being honest, is like a gold mine for male predators and creeps and things like that who are trying to convince women to engage in acts that are benefiting them sexually but are actually harmful to the women.
Yeah, so I think that you and I view morality very, very differently. I view it as subjective, and you view it as much more objective, where there's good morals, there's bad morals. I don't view it like that. I think I have what my morals are, but I can recognize that, but I don't think my morals are superior to your morals, even though we have different morals. I just think like that's what you believe is right. I think there's some universal things, right? Like obviously murder, theft, lying, because and the common theme is it causes harm to another person, like directly, right? Harm that's not consented to, right? No one actually agreed to be murdered or whatever, or to be stolen from. But I think that there's spectrums of morality, and if you're not causing harm to other people, and it's consensual, again, I don't see like I don't view myself as morally superior to those guys who are fucking, you know, like 5 girls a week. Nor do I think that Andrew, who's married with kids, is living a more morally superior life than me. I don't. I just see that as like you like to eat pasta. I like to eat sushi. You like skiing. I like, you know, fucking mountain biking. We just have different things, you know, that interest us. But I don't see one of those as morally superior, because again, I think morals are largely subjective with some universal things, you know, that I counted for. That's a key difference here.
So would you have sex with an 18-year-old?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I have a problem with that, because as like a 30-plus-year-old man, I don't think she has the appropriate decision-making ability to be able to handle the power differential between the two of you. And so the fact that she's consenting, I don't think morally lets you off the hook for what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna agree to disagree on that one. I think that as long as the girl is not drunk, you know, she's sober, and you know, you're not like in a situation where you're pressuring her. Like, I would think it's wrong if you're her boss and she's the secretary, right?
Why?
Well, because at that point there's a massive element of implicit pressure,
Okay.
right? It's very different than meeting a girl on a dating app where you have no power over her,
What
right?
about a woman of compromised mental fortitude?
Like a crazy girl, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that depends how crazy. But if a girl's like really crazy, then yeah, I do think that would be wrong, regardless of her age. Doesn't matter if she's 18 or fucking 35. I think if
Okay,
a girl is
right.
mentally unstable, then that's the same thing as her being drunk. Her mental impaired. She's mentally impaired, right? I don't see those as like different. So I wouldn't fuck a drunk girl, nor would I fuck a girl who's like, like mentally, like really mentally impaired. Like you could tell she's like, maybe she got dumped like yesterday and she's like bawling her eyes out and she's crying and she's just like, yeah, like probably in that situation, it's better to chill out and like at the very least give her a few weeks and then, re-engage with her back then rather than fuck her that night.
See, I actually think that you agree with me. I just think you're drawing the line at a different place. I think fundamentally you agree with me because based on your answer of the impaired judgment from being drunk or mental, like mental fortitude or whatever it might be, you agree that if someone isn't really capable of making the right decision, then it's immoral to take advantage of that situation. It's just for you, you're drawing the line at an obvious mental impairment or somebody who is impaired under the influence of a substance. Whereas what I'm saying is that an 18-year-old girl is not the same as a 33-year-old girl. I think you're 33. And so the diminished mental capacity she has to be able to judge whether or not this is a good idea or in her best interest, in my mind, makes what you're doing not like legally like put you in jail or anything like that, but definitely morally sketchy. Whereas the clean line that you seem to draw around it says like, no, it's completely fine. I think is a cop out because you're not taking into account the fact that she's not as equipped as a woman who's much older to be able to make those decisions. And so for me, it's a sliding scale.
Yeah, but I would say like it's a spectrum, right? So a girl who's 18 is not as equipped as a girl who's 20. A girl who's 20 is not as equipped as a girl who's 22,
yes,
and so on. So where do you draw the line? Like where would you draw the line?
That's completely fine. I don't have a problem with that, but it seems like now I've kind of got you thinking like I am, which is a spectrum, which is that you sleeping with a 24-year-old is much more morally okay than you sleeping with a 22-year-old, which is better than a 20-year-old, which is better than an 18-year-old. And you would kind of agree with that? I'm fascinated at your reluctance. Like, what scares you about agreeing to this? Like, what?
No, it's not. I'm just actually thinking because I want to give you an honest answer because this is a good question. In some ways, probably yes. Like in terms of risk, what's the real issue with her being 18, right? It's the risk of her making a decision that she's going to regret, right? That's essentially or something that's going to be harmful to her. That's really what it comes down to, right? That's the reason why you don't have sex with drunk girls and stuff like that. So is that risk higher than if she was 25? Well, yes, I think probably that risk would be higher. So by that, kind of standard, then yes, it would be, I guess, morally inferior to do that. But I think at the same time, like we as a society have like come to understanding that 18, you become an adult, you can join the army, you can smoke cigarettes. It's like, okay, well, if this girl can join the army and fight for her life, it's like she can probably make up her own mind when it comes to, sleeping partners. But yeah, again, the risk is lower. The risk is higher that she might make a mistake that she regrets.
I find that fascinating from someone who's identifying as a libertarian. I'm guessing you don't really like the government, like imposing its morality on people, and yet you defaulted to what's legal. No, sorry, have I misunderstood you?
No, I don't. I'm a libertarian.
Okay, but then you've defaulted to what the government has made legal to make your moral case then. Because she's 18, it's okay because the government says so.
Well, it's because we, as a society, it's not even just the government, society, we have come to the idea that when you're 18, at least in America, you're an adult, right? That's when you become an adult, all the rights of being an adult. Like, so yeah, I guess the government is somewhat involved in that. Like if the government changed the law and said, hey, you have to be 19 before you can have sex, then, I would respect that, obviously, because I don't want to go to jail. I just think that's kind of like what we as a society have adopted. Now, if you're going to make the argument that, hey, you're not really adult until you're like 21, that's a fair argument, right? Like I'm sure you keep growing and evolving. I know for guys, they don't reach their mental maturity until their late 20s. So yeah, but again, like I feel like, kind of to me, like the litmus test when the girl's 18, if she's sound mind is good enough. And then I don't really think about it past then.
Yeah, sure. But it does sound like you're defaulting to what has society figured out. And I'm kind of pressuring you, supposed to be like, well, what do you personally feel? But it sounds like you're willing to take ownership of that. And I'm happy to leave that there, unless there's anything else you want to say about that one.
I would just say like they're kind of intertwined, right? Because what we feel is going to be definitely influenced by society and in the countries that we live in, right? And culturally, right? Like our beliefs aren't like 100% ourselves. Like a big part of the reason you believe what you believe is the friends you've had, the books you've read, the influences you've had. Like it is certainly possible if you grew up in a totally different country with totally different community, you might be like the biggest fuckboy ever, right? Like we're all influenced by that. So, I think you can't like not acknowledge it. You can try to think for yourself and be like, wait, does this make sense? Like, like the government says you have to be 21 to drink. I look at that, I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Like if you can fight in the army, you should be able to drink in the US, at least. I know Australia is different. But yeah, I mean, I do think they're very much intertwined and you are influenced by the outside world.
Yep, sure. Can I ask, who is the woman Lil Dragon on your channel?
Lil Dragon is a Ukrainian porn star. She is a friend of a friend of a friend. We did a few collabs together on my channel.
Okay, cool. Does she seem happy to you?
I don't know her that well. I've met her twice in my whole life. Uh, it's really, really hard for me to say. Our relationship, we just never really like bonded. We've never done a podcast like this. It's literally our relationship is shooting like demonstration videos where it's just like all action and then like making like pleasant small talk for 5 minutes and talking about travel, and that's it. So I really just don't know her well enough to say whether she's happy, not happy. I don't know.
Okay, I can respect that. I see. Here's an interesting thing: is what I've noticed is that when you bring women onto your channel, they tend to be like porn stars, right? Like these are the women who you're kind of curious. I saw you react with a porn star as to like dating advice, and my first thought was, what does it matter what a porn star his reaction to this stuff is? Nobody wants to wife up a porn star. But then I think that that's my bias in that in my audience, I'm always trying to get guys into long-term relationships. Whereas for you, you're teaching guys how to seduce women. And so those kinds of women, it matters, I suppose, what they think, because if you don't think that there's a problem hooking up with hookup culture and you don't think that there's a problem with how many partners a woman has had, then there's no problem with trying to seduce a porn star. Like that's just as legitimate a choice as any other, correct?
Yeah, at the end of the day, a porn star's opinion is not any more important than a regular girl's opinion. But if I say porn star in the title, I'm gonna get a lot more views. And I do play the game to some extent. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like say things I don't believe in, but I will like, if it goes along with what I already believe, I will use props, use clickbaity titles. And yeah, the porn star, like if I do that video with a regular girl, it's just the views will be like a fraction of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main reason I get like the porn stars on board. Also, porn stars are a bit more open to these types of collabs. Like a girl who has like a 9 to 5 job, something that's like a little bit more physical, like I did with the porn stars, like that could be a big career risk for her. Like, for example, my girlfriend, who's helped me a million times in my videos, like with the physical stuff, she like is very apprehensive to do it because again, she has a corporate job, if her boss finds that, that could be bad for her work reputation. So in addition to those being more popularly viewed by guys, it's also that like porn stars are just going to be more likely to engage in that kind of content versus a lot of regular girls. It's a risk for them, if they have careers.
I have no problem with that, and I give you full credit for your street interviews series, which everyone should check out because I think they're really, really good, where you are chatting to normal women. And I thought that it was a wonderful pushback against some of the stereotypes that you see in the manosphere about how all women are the same, where you were pointing out like, hey, look, these guys were friend-zoned for a while and they still got together, or whatever it might be, like interviewing regular women. I really, really enjoyed that series. So props to you for that. But the Little Dragon video that I watched, I found fascinating at the end. And again, this is not at all intended as a criticism. I'm just genuinely fascinated in your value system as to how this has come about. But you were like, all right, hit that like button and show Lil Dragon what a dirty little slut she is.
All right, hope you guys found this video valuable and show Lil Dragon that she's a good, dirty little slut by smashing the like button.
And like she kind of giggled and you had a laugh. And I was curious, like, what is the source of the humor with that? Like, why did you say that about her?
Oh, that was all planned out. It's just humor. It's just throwing a joke in there. It's like acting, like that. All like that line. I'm not gonna actually, say that without checking with her first.
Okay.
We thought it would be funny way to end off the video. That's all. I have a pretty dark sense of humor. So yeah.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I think it's I have watched a lot of content from ex-porn actresses, trafficking victims, prostitutes, and things like that. And so many of these girls are coming into the sex worker industry from really dark backgrounds, and they're desperate to get out deep, deep, deep down, but it's covered under all of these layers of like feminism and this is empowering and things like that. I'm curious if your morality of like, well, she consents to it includes like these women like Lil Dragon and that other porn star lady that I saw, that you're like, no, this is what they're choosing. It's not my place to say that what they're doing isn't a good idea. Because just to give you a point of contrast for you to kind of springboard off of, I wouldn't feel comfortable promoting or increasing somebody's career like in that industry, because I'm like, they're walking down a bad path. That's like giving a drug addict more drugs, preventing them from getting help. Do you not see it that way?
So I understand what you're saying, and I do think for some girls it's a bad path. I think there's like two categories of like female porn stars. Some that like do come from a dark place and it's like not good for their mental health, and some that just legitimately love to get fucked. And like this is what makes them happy. Like Riley Reid, Lisa Ann, would both be girls who are in that category.
No chance. Riley Reid had an extremely traumatic upbringing. She doesn't speak to her mother. She's actually one girl I know quite a lot about, because I did a video on her like 4 years ago. She's a really good example of somebody who's in the sex worker industry because of the trauma she experienced as a child.
She might have had trauma, but if you watch her interviews, even now that she's married, she still talks about it very fondly. She's like, yeah, I'm happy I did this. Like, this is what allowed me to have the
I hate to burst your bubble, Alex, but, you know, women can lie. A lot of women don't have self-awareness. You know, the fact that she says that is not as ironclad a defense as you might think.
Well, I mean, it's like, okay, but like neither one of us knows her personally. I'm just taking what she says at face value. I don't really have any reason to doubt her. You know, if I knew her personally and I knew that's like not how she felt, then sure. But, you know, it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like she's pretty porn positive, and I've seen other girls who are like that. In terms of the Lil Dragon, yeah, again, I see she's an adult. She was doing porn way before I came along. She's gonna be doing porn way after. If anything, I'm not even like pushing her to porn, so I'm not doing porn with her. I'm doing content with her. So if anything, potentially, maybe this will help her, if there is a help feature, so as to speak, because she can realize she can do other types of content besides getting fucked. But yeah, I don't see myself as contributing or not contributing. It's just like it's just a collab. Like, you know, it's almost like, let's say I had like a massive fundamental disagreement with you. We have some disagreements, but I don't think we have massive disagreements. But let's say you were like a hardcore black pillar who had like what I thought was a toxic message, right? Like me having conversation with you in some ways could be viewed as me contributing, but again, I don't see it as that way. It's like, hey, we have different ideas. We decided to come together, do a collab, and that's kind of how I see the Lil Dragon thing. It's like we came together to do a collab, both adults. You know, I didn't cause her to get into porn. I do think it gets dicey if you like doing the Andrew Tate thing, or at least what he was doing, where you're like actually getting girls who've never done porn to do porn. Especially girls who don't want to do porn, like kind of more like conservative girls. That I will agree with you is like ethically not good. But yeah, Lil Dragon thing I view as differently, because it's just like she's already doing porn. We're not doing porn together, just a collab.
Yep.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your honesty and forthrightness in saying this, because I'm getting so much clarity on, with as much that we might have in common, where our differences lie, which is, and you pointed out quite well that you said that morality was subjective, and I think that morality is objective. It's nuanced, not that simple, but it gets to the heart of the matter in that my understanding about human beings is that we're not a blank slate. You know, I'm a big evolutionary psychology guy, and so I make the argument that being a porn actress is objectively a destructive choice. It's not good for a woman to do that. And so the fact that there are women in there who, as part of their coping mechanism, are telling themselves that they had fun, or even after they get out, they're like, no, but it was fun while I did it, and things like that. I don't find that remotely convincing, because I guess I've done enough of my own personal research, books, podcasts, whatever, about the underlying psychology, the women who get drawn into these industries, that I'm like, no, obviously it's not good. I also understand the instincts that every woman is born, where she's trying to protect her chastity for the sake of, you know, being able to appeal to a lot of men to guarantee them paternity certainty. that whole kettle of fish. And so I'm a lot more comfortable saying, all right, it doesn't really matter what you say. I'd be quite happy to sit down with Riley Reid and really drill down into it. But I would almost feel cruel to do that, because if she's coping at the moment by telling herself these lies, it feels mean to really push deep into that to the point where she's like crying and admitting how actually miserable it was. I kind of feel like she has something of a right to be able to come to that on her own terms. However, I do have a problem with somebody like that who is then promoting that lifestyle, pretending like it's empowering because of the damage they're doing to impressionable young girls who are not being adequately educated about just how much damage they're doing to their future prospects and to their own psyche.
Yeah, so the disagreement we would have is that I would say that for some girls, it is definitely detrimental. And for some girls, it doesn't seem to be detrimental at all. Just like, going back to the Army example, for some people, fighting in the Army and seeing combat is very detrimental. They get PTSD. It destroys their life. For some people, like I know ex-soldiers and Marines, totally fine. It was actually a positive experience. They became more disciplined. They became more, more focused. So it seems like really just like people handle things very differently, based on, again, I guess your values and your brain chemistry. And so I think for some girls, yes, it is very detrimental, but for some girls, I don't see it as detrimental. I would also say that with the, I've thought about this before, like, okay, like let's say you're a girl and you're working whatever, you're working like 40 hours a week, you're making like $30,000-$40,000 a year, right? You're barely able to get by, and you have to go into work and wear like a fucking outfit. It's a big drive. And then someone comes to you and says that, hey, you can actually make $40,000 a month, and you would only work 2 or 3 hours a day. Like, I'm not going to fault them for taking that option. Like, I might even take that option if I was a girl. It's like, like money is like pretty, it's like the amount of money that some of them can make, not all, but some of them can make doing OnlyFans is like really tempting. And I can't judge them for taking that option. It's just such a better money making prospect than their current jobs. So I don't know. That's kind of how I look at it. I mean, at the end of the day, you and I are both like not into porn. We're not into OnlyFans. Even if we're guys, so it could be different. I mean, okay, so let me ask this question. Do you think it's equally detrimental for men, or do you think it's different for men?
I'll answer that in just a moment, and I'll give it some thought, but I just wanted to clarify, it's not about judging the women. It's about having compassion. Do you understand the difference?
Well, I understand what compassion is, but can you explain to me can you give me like more of an example?
Maybe like, and let me reiterate, this is one of the things I like about you is I feel like you're your own man. You're not adherent to some philosophy, and you're not saying what every other guy on the internet is saying. You say what you think. And I like the fact that you're critical of other things. And so maybe your perspective is somewhat in backlash to like really hardcore manosphere types who enjoy slut shaming women, enjoy like ragging on porn stars, like have a fun time. Like, yeah, this bitch has been run through and no one's ever going to want her. She'll be a cat lady.
Oh yeah. Like I'm definitely not in that category.
No, you're definitely not. You're definitely not. But then I feel like your response maybe to that is to be like, to be accepting, to be believing and things like that. What I'm promoting is I don't want to be judging those women. What I feel is like a pain, like I feel a compassion. I feel like I understand, based on the amount of stuff that I've seen, the hurt place, the traumatized place that they must be coming from in order to be engaging in that kind of a work. And so I'm not judging, I feel compassion. And I just wanted to see if you understood the difference of where I'm trying to come from.
Sure, but you are making a judgment that it's a inferior life. It's a inferior moral path.
So
it's not just compassion.
Yeah, let me clarify that briefly, because this will get a little bit dictionary-like. But what I'm going to say is that there's a difference between judgment and discernment, in that judgment has a moral quality to it, in that you're judging somebody to be less than. It's got religious overtones, things like that. However, the ability to discern whether or not something is good or bad is quite different. And so if somebody is saying, I don't like techno music, that can be a personal discernment of, oh, I've noticed I don't feel happy when I listen to it. It doesn't mean that they think that the people in the club dancing to techno music are less than them. That would be the judgment part of it. And so for these women, because the hurt place they're coming from, I'm not judging them to be less people, but I am discerning that that choice that they're making is not a positive choice. And that's what evokes my compassion.
Yeah, I understand. So I totally get what you're saying. You're not saying they're inferior as human beings,
Yep,
right?
yep.
But you are saying that their morals or the moral path they're on is less than a girl who's not doing that, right? So there is a judgment. You're just not judging them based on on their value as a human. You're judging them based on the on their morals, right? Like you have to acknowledge that,
I'm
right?
judging their choices. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, they're morals, right? Because you would say that a girl, for example, who's pure and waits until marriage to have sex has better morals than a girl who's like a porn star, right?
Well, I view them as victims, so I don't necessarily view them as acting from a place of morality, but maybe just to make your case easier so we can have this discussion, what I will say is that if there's a porn star who is glamorizing the lifestyle and actively recruiting other women into it, I'm absolutely judging that. I think that that's a morally bankrupt thing to do.
Let's assume that she's not doing any of that. She's not recruiting anyone. She just does her own thing. She's a popular porn star. She makes whatever millions of dollars, but she never promotes it. In fact, she says, "Hey, girls, don't do this." Right? Would you then say her moral path is inferior to that of a girl who waits until marriage to have sex?
I don't think so, but if you give me a moment, I just want to make sure I'm clear on my answer.
Yeah, yeah. Take your time. That's kind of how I felt when you gave me that one question.
I, I, I don't feel like it's a question of morality. I feel compassion for her, like I do. Like I suppose if she's ethically like lying to men, like we'll meet up, like if you give me this money and she doesn't do it or things like that, giving them false hope, I guess she's contributing to a male loneliness epidemic. But I, I mean, and again, this might be difficult to understand when so much of the internet and the culture is like tribalized and trying to out to get people. But I'm genuinely coming from a place of I have compassion for all of these people, and so my moral judgment doesn't seem to come into it. But at the same time, I have extreme moral clarity. I feel about what decisions are likely to be in people's best interests. I'm
Well,
sorry if
you
that seems
could.
like a cop out answer. I guess I don't totally understand why that. What
No,
else I
yeah,
can
you're
say.
good. I'll try to give you an example. You can think someone's morally inferior and at the same time feel compassion for them. Like, I think, like I feel compassion for drug addicts. I really do. But at the same time, I think taking drugs is definitely morally inferior to not taking drugs. I will feel compassion for, let's say, people who smoke cigarettes and they're trying to quit and they can't. They've been trying for so long. I feel compassion for them, but that is morally inferior to not smoking, right?
Yeah,
So I think they're
but
not
that's the
mutually exclusive.
separation between the judgment of the action, the choice, as opposed to the judgment of the person. And I feel completely comfortable making that discernment. So I'm going to
Yeah,
judge those
you're
choices.
judging that. Yeah, you're judging the choices, but you're not judging the person, right? Yeah, I
Yep.
understand.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So then by that following that logic, then you do think that person is morally inferior. So you are
No,
judging
that's my
at
whole
least
point is that they're
at least
not
at
because
least
I'm
at
not
least
judging the
their
person.
actions. Right. But you let me try to think of a
No, that's
different
the
way how
leap
you
that you keep making. That's why we're getting crossed up. Is no, I'm not judging
No,
any
I
of these
totally
people to be
understand you're
morally
not
inferior.
judging the yeah, yeah. I totally understand you're not judging the person and you don't think they're morally inferior. You think that massive porn star has as much intrinsic value as a human as like someone like you, right? Is that correct? Okay. So I understand that. But by judging the action and judging the morals that they engage in, there's still judgment that happens. It's just not based on the person. You're not making the full jump and saying, yo, you're a worse person, which a lot of people do. You're just saying, hey, this behavior you engage in, that's not good, right?
Yes.
Well, there's nothing wrong with, by the way, there's nothing wrong with judging. I judge people all the time too. Judgment is okay. I just want to like kind of clear that out, is that you can be compassionate and also judge people at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree, but I don't think that particular thread is that interesting to go down because it's getting
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
we
bit
can we
extreme.
can move on. I know,
Okay,
yeah, some
I want to talk
we
about
can move.
jealousy because you have a one-way open relationship. So I'm assuming you're a jealous person.
No, I'm actually not at all.
Okay, how come she can't sleep with other men?
The idea of her having sex with another man is like you kicking my dog, it just makes me feel disgusted. It's not that I'm jealous of the guy, it's just that I physically, or I guess mentally, cannot abide the idea of her being sexual with another man. It would be like her taking a shit and like fucking rubbing on her hand, and like it's just like a physical disgust, basically. I guess you can say it's possessiveness. I'm definitely maybe to some extent possessive. But I don't think it would be like me feeling jealous of the guy. It's just more of like a primal disgust type of thing.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. The fact that you have a visceral reaction against it, to me, is a sign that you're normal. So there's certainly no judgment there. I will clarify that jealousy is an umbrella term. Like, you can have a wide variety of emotions when you're feeling jealous. Disgust, anger, fear, sadness, all of them can be jealous. What you're talking about being jealous of the other guy can be one expression of jealousy, but I guess you could more say like
Okay.
envy, like I wish I was in that person's place. The jealousy can just be like, I've got that negative reaction like that. So if we don't want to use the word jealousy, that's completely fine. But
Oh
I
yeah.
understand
Well,
where you-
if you define it like that, then yeah, sure, that would apply.
Okay, so maybe for the purpose of this conversation, we'll just use that as the definition. So does your girlfriend not experience any jealous reactions when you're sleeping with other women?
Yeah, she's like one of the least jealous people I have ever met. She's extremely secure, and she does not have that. Now, there are things that would make her jealous. So if I was to start hanging out with my ex-girlfriends, that would definitely make her jealous. If I was to start having sleepovers with other girls and doing a lot of date stuff, that would make her jealous. So there are limits. But when it comes to just like casual sex, yeah, it just seems like like, it's not even that like she lets me do it. It's like she'll help me. Like, she'll be like, "Hey babe, like, what's been going on with you and other girls?" I'll be like, "Oh, I don't know." She's like, "Show me the text." Like, she will go above and beyond to like help me with that. So I think that casual sex, it just like doesn't trigger her jealousy radar at all.
All right, cool. That is fascinating, because I think that's really weird. Like, that's strange to me that somebody who cares about you would be actively encouraging you to have casual sex with other women. It makes me wonder if there's so many things, but one of them, whether or not her affection for you is sincere, but you don't see it that way.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say she's like going out of her way to make sure. I'm just saying that in a certain situation, like once in a while, if we're hanging out, she'll be like, how's your Bumble going?" I'll be like, "Oh, it's all right." She'll be like, "Show me some screenshots," stuff like that. Or like, "Hey, what photos are you using?" But it's not like she's like trying to actively always help me get laid.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I have like zero reason to doubt her sincerity, and she's shown that through her actions. I mean, so many examples I could give. I had to go to Colombia because I had a medical procedure. She went with me. Literally took time off work. She was there with me for a week. She every time my mom goes into town, she goes out of her way to show my mom a good time. She'll spend like the whole day with my mom. If I'm ever feeling sick, she'll drop what she's doing. She'll come over and try to help me. She's literally reading books right now on Lyme disease to try to help me come up with better treatments. So I like never have any, like, she's just shown her commitment and sincerity so much that like I have like no reason to doubt it.
She sounds awesome. Like, congratulations. She sounds like a great
That's
woman.
just great.
So here's what I'm curious about. Do you think let's just take at face value that she doesn't experience the jealousy in those situations that you are. So we won't dispute that. We'll just assume that's a fact. Do you think that as a baby, like coming out of the womb, she was predestined to not have that particular jealous like instinct that so many other women have? Or can you point to something in her upbringing, in her childhood, in her value system that has warped things so that she has that particular exception?
That's a good question. I'm honestly not sure. I don't even know if she would have an answer to that. Her upbringing was like fairly normal. Like, her parents had a traditional relationship. The only thing that's kind of odd was that her dad was assassinated by the cartel when she was 13. But I don't think that plays into jealousy. That's
No.
more maybe like
That'll
other
probably
things.
create other
But
issues,
aside,
but
but aside from that, she's had like a very normal upbringing. She had a brother. She went to college. She got a job. She has friends. So there's really nothing in her upbringing that I can pinpoint uh, externally that would cause her to not to have jealousy. But maybe there's things that I'm missing. I don't know. That's a good question, actually.
So, like, here are some common examples, psychological explanations that might apply. Is, for example, if they saw their parents live that kind of a lifestyle, she might be reenacting that out of a sense of loyalty to her parents or out of a feeling of, well, this is how it's got to be. She may have been cheated on by a boyfriend in her past or seen her father have an affair, which would cause her to be like, well, this is just how men are. I need to allow them to have this in order to make sure I can hold on to a man. Another possible explanation is that she has low self-esteem and she doesn't feel like she deserves commitment and monogamy. Another explanation is that she herself is afraid of commitment, and so having an arrangement like this where you're allowed to sleep with other women kind of acts as a kind of buffer or a protector against her feeling like this is too real and this is going to become like a drain, like something that locks her down. There could be 20 other kind of explanations. I guess for me, in my relationship or any relationship I might have, I kind of know generally what the instincts of women are. It's universal. This is what David Buss and the other researchers have created, is that the evolutionary instincts apply basically across culture, and all women are kind of the same, with small variations based off what's gone on in terms of their upbringing. And so this would be one of the only conversations I would want to have with her. I'd just be absolutely fascinated. I'm like, what has gone on with you that you have deviated from what's normal for so many other women? And you've gone blurry, by the way.
Oh yeah, the camera just like adjusts every. Is it better now? I think it's good. It's gonna do that. I don't know why the camera does that, but yeah, like some of these things I can definitely speak on. She, as far as I know, her dad never cheated. Neither did her mom. Apparently, her dad was like a total sweetheart, from everything I've heard. So he was like very committed to the family. I don't believe she's ever been cheated on by any of her exes that I know of, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, there's really nothing. Low self-esteem. I think the issue is her self-esteem is too high. She thinks like too highly of herself, if anything. Honestly, that's kind of like we joke around about that, but her self-esteem is like ultra high. Like you can't like insult her, make her feel like shit. Like she thinks very highly of herself. So I don't think it's that. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I don't even know if she would have an answer to this question.
What does it mean?
Yes, it's mostly sure.
So I've got to delve into that, because that sounds like narcissism, but all the support that she was giving you, she doesn't sound that way.
She's definitely not a narcissist.
No, so,
yeah, no.
But like, what does it mean you can't insult her? Like, she doesn't take on feedback from other people?
No. She obviously will take feedback from other people, and she can be very humble. It's just that like, I feel like if you were to try to like insult her, she wouldn't get like upset about it. She would just laugh it off and like say, whatever, fuck you. Like she has like a strong shield, and that's her self-esteem. Like I can if we're out in public, I can totally like make fun of her for 20 minutes, and then she'll make fun of me back. We have fun, and she doesn't get triggered or take anything personally, because I feel like, again, there's certain little things, that very small things, that I do think are kind of like a chink in the armor, but generally speaking, the armor is very strong from what I've noticed, compared to like a lot of girls I know that like will take a lot of things very personally, and you can't really joke around with too much, and will get upset if someone like makes fun of them or whatever. So yeah, she definitely has like strong self-esteem, that's for sure.
So how often is she crying and you're comforting her and you're part of that process?
Maybe once every few months or something.
Okay.
She's a really strong woman. I will say that. I respect that about her. She's really strong, like in terms of her willpower and character. Yeah, I've seen her cry, and I've comforted her several occasions, but it's not often.
Which I'm sure in your mind speaks to strength. I'll just posit an alternative explanation, just because I find this fascinating. And again, you've been such a sport answering all my questions. The moment you're like, Alex, cut this out, this is too much, you just let me know. All right. So
no, it's all good, man. I'm enjoying this.
Okay, good. What I'm thinking is that if you've got a girl who just brushes off all the criticisms or insults, you can't insult her, all that feedback, and just makes jokes and gives off like that. And the way that you said was that her self-esteem acts like a shield. My thought is self-esteem doesn't act like a shield. That's not how self-esteem works. Self-esteem acts like an open window. People throw things at it and it just goes in right out the other, but there's no need to actually block it or stop it, which is why I asked the question about the crying. Is I'm wondering if she just kind of has like a protective shield of like, I don't show people these emotions, I don't let them see my vulnerability, I'm just really, really strong, and that's all that's going on. And so that's why you know, only had a couple of occasions where you've comforted her while she's kind of crying, because she's like, no, it's not like that. And if potentially this tolerance that she has of you sleeping with other women is part of this need of like, all right, I'm just going to keep things strong, nothing bothers me going on there, whereas there might actually be a secret part.
Well, I think we really need to clarify between like people insulting her and valid criticisms from people that she cares about.
Okay.
Like if I give her criticism, and I have many times, you know, about things that she does that, you know, maybe upsets me a little bit, and her friends have, and her mom has, right? She's not going to just brush it off. She will take that and she will process it. And vast majority of the time she will act on that, right? So she's not like closed off completely. It's just what I was talking about is more like insults, like people on the internet being like, you're a busted three, like stuff like that. Like just pure vitriol insults that don't have any constructive purposes, right? And what I'm saying is like a lot of girls get really bothered by that.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people in general, not even girl thing, like a lot of people get really bothered by that. But like it doesn't seem like she gets that affected by it. Like, does it probably bother her a little bit deep down inside? I'm sure it does, right? But she can like kind of laugh it off, like, you know. And this is not meant to be constructive criticism. This is meant to be just someone trying to be a dickhead insulting her because they don't like me and she's my girlfriend, right? Which is like the shittiest thing ever. So yeah, so I do think, yeah, she just has, I guess, like the way I would explain, she has like strong self-esteem, she has strong boundaries and strong willpower, at least for a girl. I feel like girls generally are weaker in that than men. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think compared to other girls I've dated. I generally tend to date women who are like more mentally stable and have higher self-esteem in general. But she's tough. I mean, I guess that's the word I would use. She's pretty tough. But it doesn't mean she's like closed off to like positive feedback and whatnot.
Yep.
Like,
I appreciate that clarification. So, like, just to make it clear, I am open to the possibility that she genuinely doesn't have an issue with it. It would surprise me, and I would probably need to ask her a bunch of questions and know her for a period of time before I would be willing to change, like, my feeling, like, okay, something's going on, there's some aberration here. But I am open to it. But the reason I'm kind of throwing all these things at you is just out of my own curiosity, because if there is something about your girlfriend that's a genuine anomaly of female psychology, I'm desperate to know it. I'm desperate to understand it. So I would treat your girlfriend like a science experiment. I'd be like, tell me how you think. How did you achieve this? Like, why isn't it like that? And the last thing before I let go of this subject is I'm curious if you kind of did like what is it? Who was the famous Robbie Williams? No, that's the singer. Who's the guy from Jumanji? Oh, this is embarrassing.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so in Good Will Hunting, he does this. But if you were to say to your
Robin Williams,
Robin
the guy
Williams
that passed away.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. In England, there's a pop singer that was called Robbie Williams that was throwing me off. So Robin Williams, he says it's okay. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Over and over and over again. And eventually, the barrier of Matt Damon's character breaks down, and he cries and he hugs him. I wonder if you were to say to your girlfriend over and over and over again for like 5 minutes, it's okay for you to be sad that I'm sleeping with other girls. And she'd be like, yeah, of course, that doesn't bother me. It's okay for you to be sad that I'm sleeping with other girls. If you kept doing that over and over and over again, I wonder if she'd be like, Alex, it really doesn't bother me. You're just acting weird. Or if there's part of her, it's like, oh my God, maybe it's finally safe for me to express this emotion, which I've always kept hidden. I've never let him see. And if you ever felt like you wanted to do that experiment, feel free to write me an email and let me know how it goes. But that would be something I'd be very curious about.
Yeah, so I mean, I've never gone that far. We're asking multiple times, but she has been to therapy, and so have I, right? I try to be very public about the fact that I went to therapy. It was beneficial for me. She went to therapy, it was beneficial for her. And I do know that's something that her therapist asked her pretty extensively, like, are you sure? And it seems like that just didn't bother her. Like I don't know. I feel she seems like, yeah, I do agree. She's somewhat of an anomaly. I do think the majority of people would probably not feel good about that deep down inside. But that's why you have like people who are into polygamy or whatever, polyamory, right? There's a small percentage of people who just don't feel those urges. Destiny is a really interesting example. You're familiar with Destiny?
Yep.
Yeah, so his is like a two-way open relationship. So his wife actually has sex with other men. And like I asked him when he was on my podcast, like many times, like, Destiny, so you really saying this doesn't bother you? He's like, dude, I don't give a crap. I'm like, are you sure? And like I've hung out with him privately too, and I've like asked this. I've done what you're saying, where you ask the same question. He's like, dude, it just doesn't bother me at all. Like I don't know how to explain to you. It just doesn't affect me. So there's just small percentage of people who just don't get those, I guess, I don't know, jealous urges.
No, 100%. It's whether or not those people are mentally healthy. That's what's interesting to me. Of course, there are people like Mr. Slave or whatever who are into crazy shit and doesn't like them. But I'm like, okay, something's gone wrong. You know what I mean? And that's,
yeah, I would say Destiny and like my girlfriend are definitely very mentally healthy, like much more mentally healthy than the vast majority of people that I interact with. Yeah, for sure.
see that I find fascinating. That makes me want to get to know them like even more, to drill into this, because like there's something about humans that I don't understand in that instance. Like that would seem to be an anomaly worth studying. But I want to switch topics.
I'd be happy to put you in touch with Destiny if you want to ever chat with him.
No disrespect to him, but I did watch, I think, about 20 minutes of your live stream, like debate with him, and I couldn't get through it. I don't know. I found it a real struggle. Look, maybe it would be interesting for the purpose of this one. I'd like to drill into it, but again, the chances of like to me, he strikes me as a guy who likes being combative and likes debates, likes arguments. Is not me. I'm enjoying the conversation with you right now because I don't feel like I'm succeeding at your expense, or hopefully you're not feeling that you're succeeding at my expense. I would talk to you if we were just hanging out like in private, and this is what I want to know about you. But that's just a little bit an off topic.
Destiny has that side too. You just don't get to see it a lot online. But yeah, like when we've grabbed dinner a few times, and yeah, like we're not debating. Like he's got that side. I just think that his audience really wants to see the debate stuff, so he's like motivated. Like he's like, I got to be debating people, which is like a catch-22.
The thing I watched was you talking to him about Passport Bros, and you were like, you kept saying all these things. You were doing like 90% of the conversation. He's like, I don't know. And then you'd like, well, this statistic comes up, and he's like, well, I don't know if I believe that. And I was like, how? It just shocked me. I thought you were so endlessly patient with him. I was thinking, this is frustrating the hell out of me. But everyone's got a different tolerance level. But anyway, that is a separate topic. What I want to ask you before I finish up with your girlfriend is I want to ask you if you're in love with her.
Yeah, I very much love my girlfriend.
So what does that feel like?
I mean, it's a good question, right? Because like, is love infatuation? Is it like? Let me try to think of what like a good answer is. It's like, in some extent, like there's an element of it, like the way I love my best friend, but then there's also a romantic element to it as well. It's just like you cannot imagine your life without that person. They mean so much to you. They make you happy. You legitimately want to hear from them, and you legitimately want them to be happy. Like having them give you a hug is just like feels really good. Yeah, it's a combination of infatuation and strong connection, and I think bonding, and caring. And I guess in this case, there's a romance factor, obviously, because it's my girlfriend. Yeah. I know that's not the best explanation, but I've thought about this. Like, I don't really know how to explain love, honestly.
I do find, like on my channel, there's a lot of here's women to avoid, that kind of thing. That's a lot of my stuff. And I like to ask people that question because I think we need more positive things to shoot from. So even though you don't feel satisfied, I'm glad that you answered just in the way that you did, because hopefully there's some guys listening. It's like, all right, cool. That's something that I can shoot for. Can I ask you if you've ever been in love before, or is this your first?
I have been in love before.
What happened?
No one interested. I've been in love. Natty's my third love, I would say. I've been in 5 relationships. She's my 5th relationship. I would say that 2 of them I really liked, but I didn't love, and 3 of them, including Nadia, I loved. So the first one, my first girlfriend ever, we'll just call her N. We grew apart. We met when we were in college, and we're going to the same school. We had a lot in common. And then afterwards, she moved to Los Angeles. She got a career as an engineer, and I was doing my own thing. And we just our interests and values grew apart. That's really the best way to explain it. And we really tried to make it work for a while. We would break up, get back together, but it was just like we grew apart too much. Neither one of us was that person that initially met the other person. My third girlfriend, Maria, that one's like kind of like it was a really tough situation. I don't know how to talk about without getting really into her like personal business, which I'm like really weary of doing. I'd be happy to tell you offline, just because with her, I would have to explain some private things about her that she might want to keep confidential.
Okay, so I'll tell you why I asked it, because that can direct your answer. I guess I'm checking, is love enough to keep a relationship together? But it sounds like
definitely not.
No, it's not. So what else
No.
do you think is necessary? Like, what's different about this relationship with Maki as to the other two? If the love is the same, but there's an additional element, what is that additional element?
I think you need similar values, similar goals in life. Like you love your girlfriend, but she wants to have a family with kids. You don't want to have kids. That's not going to work, right? You need to have similar goals, similar values. Yeah, I would say those are the 2 big things in addition to love.
Is sex different for you when you're in love with the person?
Yes.
How so?
It's much more like it's just a lot more passionate. It's like a bonding thing, and it's like it's kind of really hard for me to verbalize it, but it does feel different than sex with a random girl.
Okay. I mean, I'd love to know more.
Yes. I'm trying to think of how to explain it. It's like I'm not trying to hold back on purpose. I'm not sure how to answer that. It's like, I don't know. It's like, well, connection is obviously not something you can physically observe, but it is something you can feel. And I think that like that connection, it just hits a different part of your brain. In addition to obviously, pleasure because you're having sex, you get that like connection type of hit, and that like makes you, I don't know, just feel a bit different than if you were to have sex with some random girl. I don't know. I wish I could explain it better, but that's the best I got.
Maybe if we chat again, I'll ask you again, and you'll have had some time to think about it.
Well, how would you explain it? I'm curious. What would be your answer to that?
I don't have enough sexual experience outside of love to have a good data point, whereas I feel like you do. Like,
Okay,
I guess I've turned down, way more casual encounters than I ever had because it didn't feel right to me. I guess like the thing that you have where it's like, no, it's all good. Like I can have a one night stand. I'm fine with that hookup culture. That's never been my thing. So I don't know. That's what I'm curious about is for like, you're a unique guy in that you've had girlfriends that you've been in love with, you've had a bunch of sex with them, and you've also had a bunch of casual encounters that I'm guessing just meant nothing, essentially. It was just like physical.
Yeah.
They would seem to be massively different experiences, and of course I'm curious about what is the chasm there.
I wouldn't say they're massively different. I would say there's definitely differences, but I would say it's like at least a 60% overlap. But with a girl you love, there's like an additional bonus aside from the physical, like an emotional bond that I feel gets stronger after you have sex, and you feel yourself closer to that girl, like emotionally, after you have sex with her. But yeah, so it's like an additional add-on, basically.
Yeah. So you've never felt after a casual encounter like post-nut syndrome, like a regret, like what am I doing? This was not a good idea.
Of course, yeah. With certain girls for sure.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that based on what you were saying earlier. Can you tell me about that? Why did you have that feeling?
It almost always comes down to the fact the girl is not really as attractive as I would like her to be. I was willing to overlook that. because I want to bust a nut. And then when I bust a nut, I look at her, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I can do better than this. That's 99.9% of it. Yeah.
So are you saying like your self-esteem took a drop because you have like a self-image of yourself of someone who can be with hotter women?
Yeah, I think that's definitely probably most of it for sure.
That I find absolutely fascinating. Not that you'd have that feeling, because I would have that feeling. I'm just surprised that you would have that feeling, because I was getting the impression from you before that you could feel sex was just a kind of neutral sort of thing. Whereas it seems like you're actually, in each of your sexual encounters, or at least in the past, you're investing, some psychology in there, like your own self-image.
Well, I only want to have sex with the attractive girls, to be more specific, girls who I find attractive. So a girl who's like 5'10" and like super skinny and like model looking may be attractive to most of the world, but I wouldn't find her attractive, right? So that wouldn't really do much for me. So yeah, like I only, enjoy sex with girls who I find attractive, right? Like that's why I don't have sex with like overweight girls or something like that. That just like doesn't do anything for me. In fact, I don't think I could even get a boner.
But there's
Yeah,
there's a difference between your capacity to enjoy it and the feeling that you're having afterwards. That's what I'm getting at, is that you might say, oh, I only want to have sex with them because I'm attracted to those kinds of women. But then what about the regret that comes afterwards? It seems like there's got to be a separate level of, there's a physical pleasure that comes from, I enjoy beauty. I enjoy the way her skin feels.
I think it's
like
both. I think it's both, actually. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's, I don't get that physical pleasure during the sex act, and I'm like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like part of my brain is like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And the other part of my brain is like, come on, bro, just bust a nut. She's not that bad. Just turn the lights off. And it's like there's like the angel and the devil, and then the other part of it is like the after self-esteem thing. I'm just like, oh my god, what the fuck am I doing now? Yeah, that used to happen to me much more when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, and back when I used to drink. Actually, stopping drinking really, really significantly, like by 98%, mitigated that issue. That was really the big thing that was causing that big surprise. But yeah,
it sort of sounds like you don't really recommend men generate their self-esteem based on their sexual encounters. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I don't recommend that, because if you fail, then your self-esteem would be low. You want it to be built on something much more stable.
But if you could always succeed.
If you could always succeed, yeah, I mean, that would be a lot better for sure. But
Can I explain to you?
I think that,
sorry.
I was just going to say, I think something that is better to base your self-esteem on is not actually the results, but on the action that you take. So, hey, if I went out there and I didn't pussy out and I talked to girls, that's it. I feel good. I took the right kind of action. If I just sat around, made excuses, fucking jerked off to fucking little dragon porn, then no, I should not feel good, because I fucking let myself down. So I prefer, at least for me, for a while, a lot of it has been based on like me taking right action. And if I just like, I remember when I was like in my mid-20s, when I was really into like game and pickup and shit, like if I would slack off and just like make excuses, I would legitimately like feel sad. I would not feel good about myself. So therefore, I'm like, I don't want to feel sad. I want to feel good. Therefore, I'm going to go and take right action. Same thing with the gym. Same thing with work. Same thing with a lot of things. All right. Yeah, I would say like, go ahead.
I want to tell you why I don't think it's a good idea, to see if you agree with it, or to see where you can find where you disagree with it. Because I think the value system that women use to judge whether or not to have a one-night stand with a man is not a good value system. First of all, I don't think high quality women have one night stands or are interested in it. But secondly, the women that do are going to be looking for a guy who's like a smooth talker, very dominant, aggressive, cocky, fun, whatever like that might be. Not a problem, not in and of itself. Some of that is an expressive masculinity, which men should cultivate. You've got to be able to generate attraction. But if you stay there, ultimately you realize that that's a bit of a show. It's a bit superficial. It's a bit of glitz and glamour. It's a bit of a game of seduction. And whether or not you're successful at that doesn't actually speak to deeper layers of quality that you have as a man. And so I would say that it's a better source of your self-esteem, not if you can seduce like club women into having one night stands, and therefore that means you're an awesome guy and you feel good about yourself, but whether or not you're able to find a high quality woman who knows you deeply and respects your deepest values and the way that you conduct yourself in the world, that's a much better source of self-esteem. Would you agree with that, or do you take issue with any of that?
I agree and disagree with parts of what you said.
Okay.
The issue is that even if with a really good girl who values you, you're still basing your self-esteem on something external. And that makes me uncomfortable. I don't think your self-esteem should be based on external results. What if that girl breaks up with you, right? Do you now feel like shit about yourself? Like, let's assume you didn't do anything wrong.
I have a very complete answer to this one. So I've heard this lots of times from the manosphere. It's a bit of a trope about that kind of independent stoicism. And in my mind, it completely ignores the fact that we are intensely social creatures. Your brain is hardwired for social feedback. That's why social media is so addictive to everybody, because we're fascinated to know what people think. So the idea that you shouldn't be basing your self-esteem off what other people think would be impossible to practice. Every child, like a 5-year-old child, how good they feel about themselves is entirely based off how much attention and love their parents gave them. If they gave them a lot, they're like, gosh, I must be a really special person. My parents seem to love me. They want to spend time with me. They go into school with a really high self-esteem. If their parents are abusing, traumatizing, or neglecting them, they have a very low self-esteem, because that's the social feedback that they've gotten. And while it lessens as you go through life, like ideally, after puberty, you should start to form your own value system. It's completely unreasonable in my mind to say you're not meant to take into account the social feedback you get from anybody at all. Especially like 100% your chosen romantic partner, because you've chosen her above all the other billions of women on the planet because you saw something special in her. You bonded with her. You have the same values as her. If you don't care what she thinks about you, you're like a sociopath. And so in my mind, I'm so close to being done. Since it's like the default, like you are going to be caring about the social feedback of this particular person, it makes sense in my mind not to deny it or feel bad about it, but to lean into it, and therefore to try and attract really positive people into your life that you do respect, and then let yourself have your self-esteem be based on how they see you.
Yeah, so I think you're misunderstanding me a little bit. I'm speaking like somewhat hyperbolically. No, of course, to some extent, unless you're like a Buddhist monk, like unless like 0.01% of people may be immune to that, but 99.9% of people are definitely vulnerable to social feedback, right? Like there's no denying that. Like if I, for example, I don't know, like everyone starts hating me on YouTube, like as stoic as I think I am, that's going to take a toll on my mental health. If my friends all say like, yo, you're a big piece of shit, and my girlfriend breaks up with me, that'll take a big toll on my mental health, right? Like there's no denying that. I think the goal though is to try to minimize that as much as reasonably possible and ground your self-esteem in things that are not as external, that are more internal, things that are more within your control. But yes, you cannot completely shut yourself off to that. But like it's like going back to the example you gave, like in order to get in a relationship with a really great girl, you have to go on a date with her, right? And you're probably not going to get the first one. You're probably going to have to go on a few dates with a few different really great girls, and then one of them, you'll be able to eventually, build something with, right? So like you go on a date with a girl that you think is great, she's perfect. And turns out she rejects you at the end of the date, which will happen, especially if she's a great girl, she's a high quality girl. That means a lot of guys are chasing her. That means her standards are high, right? So then, like, what's the option? You feel like shit about yourself because this girl that basically, was exactly what you were looking for, rejected you and gave you bad social feedback. Well, I would argue that's not good, right? That's not good. It would be much better if the way you looked at it was like, what, hang on a second. I took action. I did everything within my power. I approached this girl. I was very charming. We went on a great date. I did everything right. I did everything right. I should feel good about myself because through my own actions, I got to go on a date with an attractive girl. Who cares that she doesn't like me, right? So I think that's something like within your own actions is a much more stable thing to ground your self-esteem in.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely agree with that. So that was solid advice. I really liked listening to that. But it does also now seem like we are in agreement, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that it is more sensible to base your self-esteem on how like your girlfriend of 4 years looks at you as opposed to the way that your last hookup looks at you.
I don't think either is good. I think that
Okay.
you should try to minimize. I think we're both. I think. Look, we're influenced by both, right? Like I think that if I was to go on a date, if I was to like hook up with some random chick, and or actually like let's say we go on a date and we don't get to the point of a hookup, and she's like, you're disgusting. Look at your hair loss. This is gross. You look like you're 40 years old. Your fucking YouTube channel sucks. Like that would affect me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Now, look, if my girlfriend did that, that would play a much bigger role.
Right.
That's because I value what she has to say much more than I value a random girl. But I just don't think external. I think you should try to minimize to a large extent as much as possible how your self-esteem from external factors, and should just try to base it on internal factors. Like even with like the relationship thing, like if like let's say our relationship unfortunately ends, right? Obviously I'll feel upset, but a better mindset would be to like, hey, listen, I tried talking to her. I tried getting her to go to therapy. I did everything right. I tried this and this and that. As long as you're being honest, you have some self-awareness, right? It is not my fault that she decided to go in a different direction in life, and I'm not gonna feel bad about that. That's a better mindset and a better reframe. I mean, like
Call
we
that
can.
risk mitigation and planning for failure.
No, I would disagree with that. I think it's just that I think it's so much better to ground your mental health and your self-esteem and internal things. I mean, like let's take a look at like we're both content creators, right? Like I don't know if you get this, but like let's say you put out a video and like a lot of people hate it, you get low views. Like, does that affect your like just your self-esteem or your dopamine loop at all?
If I agree with the criticisms, it'll hurt a lot. If I'm confident in myself, it'll hurt less. If it's my core audience, it'll hurt more. If the video goes viral and is sent out to a bunch of people who don't know me, it's going to hurt a lot less. So it's all nuanced in that regard.
Okay. Yeah. I would say for me, like if I put out like a series of videos and they all bomb and everyone's like shitting on the videos, but I think the videos were great. I did my absolute 100% best. Like I could not have done any better. When it came to making the video, I might get like I'm not perfect. I will get like a little bit affected, right? And I might get a little bit into a rut. I'm not saying that I'm like perfect, but I think that's much better than the content creator that will start beating themselves up and being like, oh my fucking God, I'm such a loser. Everyone hates me, right? And that's the content creator that tied his self-esteem into the feedback from his his audience. And I just try to tie, I guess when it comes to YouTube, my self-esteem into like the work that I do. And like, do I feel like I did everything possible for that video? If I took an L and I still did everything possible, then like I'm not going to beat myself up too much because I did everything I could. So I just think it's just a better, I don't think that's planning for failure. I just think that's like a better like frame to view the world in.
So I agree with that. So it's not an or, I'm just doing an and. I just feel like I'm adding on to what you're saying because I agree with that. The planning for failure comment was about your girlfriend not taking your advice after you sent her to therapy, things like that. To me, what it seems like is it's similar to something we discussed earlier in the podcast, where it feels like you've seen the negative, and so your solution is just to kind of cast a blanket over it and just be like, none of this. Whereas in my perspective, the opposite of the negative, what you're shooting for is the positive. Okay, so negative feedback from random strangers who are just expressing, projecting their own hate. Obviously, let's not pay attention to that. In my mind, that doesn't mean, so go it alone, be by yourself, you're the only person I can trust. It means seeking out that community of people who really, really do love and support and admire you. And I think you agree with that. But where I'm going to push ever so slightly on you is that I think that you could probably stand to let more people in like your girlfriend or whoever else is close to you, even myself in this situation, you know, we've chatted for cumulatively about 4 hours. Like, I like you, I care about you. I would want you to care about my opinion of you. I would want me to be a part of that. And to me, that might make it feel like suddenly you're feeling vulnerable. You know, like, oh, this person is not in control, they might suddenly say that I'm a dickhead, and then I'm going to feel shit. Why would I give that over to somebody else? That's the risk. But it's a calculated risk. If you can see me, trust me, you like me, you can generally trust my character and my intentions, by letting me in, you're going to get two things. First is a relationship where we're bonding, and we're going to feel closer, and we're going to feel less existentially lonely, more safe, and that's a good thing. And second is you're going to get somebody who you trust, who's going to be able to tell you hard truths when you yourself are not necessarily wanting to hear that, but you absolutely need to. So just as a point of contrast, I'm going to guess you're going to agree with what I'm saying, but just in case you don't, like, in my life, the internet is kind of a separate world. There are people who I do pay attention to, but I have personal relationships, and these people really matter to me. I've vetted them. I've spoken to them for thousands of hours. They know so much about me. They know where I'm coming from, and I trust them so much. I feel so intensely close to them. The idea of me being a separate entity and having a self-esteem that doesn't include the way that they look at me would seem completely alien to me at this point. But those relationships have soothed so much anxiety, so much loneliness, so much existential angst, and I feel so safe within that tribe. I didn't just let anybody in, let fucking random internet commenters affect my self-esteem. But after going through that process, knowing that I am a socially wired person, I'm like, all right, I'm going to let people in, but I'm going to do it safely. I'm going to do it smartly. And it's worked really well for me.
Yeah. So what you're saying totally makes sense. I would just add in one caveat for myself personally. And yeah, like, for sure, like, I really value the feedback of the people that I'm close with, right? I really do. I think I'm probably one of the better people when it comes to like YouTube, whatever, Manosphere, about like being open to feedback and not getting my ego up in the notch, and like actually taking the feedback. Like at my company, like, it's not just me, it's like it's 5-6 people behind Playing with Fire. Like, I always say, like, hey, listen, guys, if you think my idea sucks, tell me. I'd rather know that my idea sucks. And like for a lot of people, when they initially join, it's like it's because you're not supposed to like tell the boss that his sucks or whatever. So it's like for them, it's a little bit of adjustment. Like, no, listen, guys, like, if I make a mistake, if I'm doing something bad, I want you guys to tell me. So I totally get that. I would say for me personally, from just being fully transparent, I definitely have some trust issues because I've been burned so many times, especially since the time I've been on YouTube. So many people that were like my YouTube friends and then fucked me over. It's been so many people. So now I'm just like super duper skeptical and defensive when meeting a new person. It doesn't mean I can't, build a relationship with the person. That still happens. It's just that so many people were like, cool with me. I met them in real life. They were over my house and they just wound up fucking me over some way. So I'm just like now at like a really like kind of defensive point where I'm like, okay, I'm like really, really good about being vulnerable with my friends, and I'm really, really bad about being vulnerable with new people who haven't gone through my super duper extensive like fucking year-long process.
Well, I think that's smart. Honestly, I think you're doing the right thing then. You should be discerning. And it sounds like the problem with those guys who fucked you over is that you weren't discerning enough and you've learned your lesson. And it also doesn't sound like it's causing you to cast out people who don't deserve to get cast out. You've still got your close friends around you, your girlfriend, things like that. If you suddenly were like, I can't trust everyone, and you just blocked everybody and became a hermit, that would be an overcorrection.
Yeah,
but it sounds
sure.
like you've got self-awareness and you're doing this in a smart way. And I applaud you for that.
Yeah, I definitely have like at least probably 24 people that I am very vulnerable with and I truly trust, and I'll like talk about any issues I have and they'll talk to me about issues they have. So yeah. But yeah, for new people, it's a fucking process.
Yeah, man.
I'm just super because just too many stories.
Man, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I think that's a really good note to leave it on, if that's okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Oh, for sure.
Well, can I just sorry.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll do my plug first. Can I recommend anybody who hasn't yet gone into the seduction community or the pickup community, go and check out his channel, because the values stuff where you saw Alex and I disagree in this podcast as it relates to morality or long-term relationships, all that aside, from a practical point of view, Alex knows his stuff. I really like your text game series and how to approach women. Like, I think you're very good at what you do. I think that there's a really good market, and I am constantly trying to tell more guys to do pickup stuff, because that's where I came from. I came from the pickup community. A lot of guys are just skipping that stage altogether, and they just want to know about female psychology without actually learning how to actually flirt, how to actually generate attraction, how to make themselves masculine. And so I'm always happy that there are people like you out there, because it's not my area of expertise or interest, but I'm glad there are people out there doing that. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope that people go and check out your stuff.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And yeah, if you guys want to see more discussions between me and Alexander, we did a debate about a year and a half ago. So check that out. It's still on the channel. But yeah, we give practical, no BS dating advice. And we do debates and we do crazy shit like that. And you can find out who Mr. Slave is. So it doesn't get better. But yeah, dude, I appreciate you having me on. This was a really, really good discussion.